put my coffee on the other side of the room. Well, that was dumb. Hey everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with my fall TBR. So it is officially fall, although like many of you, I'm sure, once September hits, it's fall. Honestly, some years, once August hits, it's fall. Not this year, but some years. But this year, it wasn't until September. Once I started reading for the Magical Readathon, then I was like completely in the fall mood. So, per usual, I thought I would come on and tell you about the books that I want to read this fall season. Some of these will look familiar because they're already on my September TBR. Some of these I've probably put on 1,000 different lists, to be honest. But this year, these are the ones that I'm vibing with, I'm feeling. So without further ado, let's dive into the books that I'm hoping we'll read this fall. Alright, starting off, this is the only one I'm looking at this list that is probably the least fall. Vibe-wise, but I always want to read thrillers and mysteries in the fall, so that's why it's on this list. And that is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. This is this author's most recent one. It is a little bit more summery because I'm pretty sure, like I could tell based on the cover, there's some palm trees, there's like some waves, so it's definitely more tropical. It basically follows a bunch of different couples. This couple was approached to take part of this show where all the couples compete for the title of the One Perfect Couple. They go to this island to take part in this competition reality TV show, and I think someone ends up dead and things start happening. I have read one Ruth Ware book, Turn of the Key, and I honestly wasn't going to pick it up except for it was for a book club that I'm in, and it was very good, and so something about this just kind of like drew me in. So I'm hoping to get to this one in the earlier part of the fall. We'll see, but this one is probably the least fall vibe-wise because it takes place on an island, but it's a thriller, so it's very fall for me. Next up is one that's definitely been on my fall TBR for a couple of years now, and that is The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. This is the sequel to Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and it is one that I just keep putting off because I loved the first one so much. I'm really afraid the second one's not going to live up to the hype for me, and I think I keep putting it off for that reason. But I loved the first one so much. I have the prequel on my TBR for September, so we'll see if I get to that one. But it's a witchy book, which is perfect for fall for me. I love a good witchy story. So in this world, the first book takes place in like an alternate world where witches exist, and there are witches and warlocks, and the witches are more powerful, so they're the ones who are like running the government. And it follows 4 women who kind of grew up together and learned their powers together, and it shows them kind of a different perspectives of kind of this big thing that's going on. One of them is in charge of the government, and they have been told by some of the oracles that this like kid is going to come in and kind of start this big bad end of the world kind of situation, and she thinks she's pinpointed who this kid is. So she gets help from one of the other people, one of the other 4, to kind of help mold this child, to maybe help them learn how to control their powers a little bit more so that they don't actually become like this end of the world person. But it has to do with a lot of trans rights and what that means within this community and the witch community, and like some of these people are against, some of these people are for. It's like a whole conversation. So I devoured the first one like it was nothing, and the second one came out, like I said, a couple of years ago, I'm pretty sure, 2023. Oh, it only came out last year, 2023. Loved the first one so much that I'm so nervous about this one. There's going to be a third one. It is a trilogy, but I just need to read it, you know? I just really need to read it. The next one is the one that is a little bit more of a recent release, and that is Mysterio by Adeline Grace. This is the 3rd and final book in the Belladonna trilogy. I have no idea where we're going to go in this one based on how the second one ended. I have lots of questions, and honestly I think we're going to follow a different character in this one. It makes sense for the story, but I'm not sure. Anyway, the first book, Belladonna, follows our main character Signa, who is very connected to death. He's always around, and her parents died when she was really young, and she's kind of jumped around from guardian to guardian, and they all somehow meet and end in some way. But they all keep taking her in, even though they don't want her, because whoever I think is her guardian when she comes of age, because her parents left her a lot of money, they'll get something, but everyone just keeps dying around her. So she is sent to her very last relative that's basically available. So if something happens to this one, she's in trouble, but he is a cousin, and he is mourning the loss of his wife. And his daughter is very sickly, and it seems like she has the same thing that killed his wife, and his son is just trying to hold things together. So one of the things that Signa can do, because she's so connected with death, is that she can see ghosts. And so she is in this mansion, in this manor, and she sees the ghost of this cousin's wife. And this ghost tells her basically, look, I was poisoned. I need you to figure out who did it, because my daughter is going the same way that I am, which means that she is being poisoned. And you have to figure out who it is before she dies. And so it's a murder mystery. That's the first one. The second one has another bit of a murder mystery, a different murder mystery, but it's fantastical. It's got like death as a character. He's his own person. And the second one, we get a similar being like death. And so this one continues, if you will, from that. And I just really enjoy the first two. So it's gothic, it's mysterious, it's fantastical, it's everything I want in a fall read. All right, the next one I'm really like, this is good. This one and like maybe one other is like the top one that I like have to read this year, and that is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I've had this on so many TBRs and I still haven't made time for it. It's literally on my TBR, my Magical Readathon TBR. So like, I really hope I get to it by the end of September. This book follows Elspeth, and I don't know a whole lot about it except for the fact that she has a monster kind of living in her head and is keeping it hidden because obviously that's weird. It is fantastical, obviously, and I believe the magic system has to do with like a deck of cards, but I don't really know much more than that. But she ends up teaming up with this like guy she meets in the forest to go find some cards, because if you get, I don't know, like, but like basically they go on a quest to like save her village. And so it's more than that, but I don't know much more than that because everything I've heard is from people who've read it, and it sounds very confusing, so I have to read it for it to make sense to me, basically. But I mean, she has something living in her head. Fantastical. I feel like that's just like tells you right there why it feels so fall. All right, the next one I'd like to pick up is Cloaked in Shadow by Ben Alderson. This is the first in a trilogy about elves. I've read one book by him. I have quite a few. Like literally, I have so many books by this author. But I loved the one that I read. I just really need to read more because I have so many at this point. But this was his first, I believe this was his debut. So his debut series, I have all three. And it follows a guy, Zachariah, who was taken by the elves to the capital and forced into a new legion of shapeshifters, except for he's not a shapeshifter. He doesn't know what he is. So, like, he's told he's got this power, but does he? It's giving, I mean, like, look at the cover. The cover is even giving fall vibes, but it's like that fantasy wood vibe that it gives me. Seems like it should be fall, but I've had these on my list forever. The first one's not very big. They get bigger as you go, but like, come on. I've had them for so long, I need to read them. The next one is one that I got in an Unplugged a while ago, and that is The Woman in the Library, and this is by Solari Gentile. It's a mystery thriller. Basically, everyone's in this library, and all of a sudden, it's like a normal day, and then a woman screams in the library, and they basically get locked in. Security guards take charge, instructing everyone inside to stay put until the threat is identified and contained. And while they wait for the all clear, 4 strangers who happen to be sitting at the same table pass the time in conversation, and friendships begin, but each has reasons for being in this specific room, and it happens that one might be a murderer. So, mysterious library. Sounds interesting. I'm on board. Alright, so the next one is one that I got last year in the hopes that I would read it, and then I did not get it in time, but hopefully this year. And that is The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brittany Randall. This one is her debut, if I remember correctly. And it gives, like, if you like practical magic vibes. We follow our main character, Sadie, and she obviously is a witch and has magic powers, and she says she's always believed the curse of 4 heartbreaks that accompanies her magic would be worth the price. But then her grandmother, who's kind of like the matriarch of the family, the backbone of the family, it says, is diagnosed with cancer and only has weeks to live. So that's her first heartbreak. Then her ex-boyfriend, who she was like with in like high school or something, comes back into town. Her brother comes back into town and like unravels her life. Some family secrets come out, and she's worried about keeping the family together because her grandmother did that. And then with her gone, it's gonna fall to Sadie. So it's got some vibes. I've read, like, if you like practical magic, like this is the book for you. But magic sounds fun, sounds a little cozy. There's definitely some more to it than that, but I'm interested. The next one is purely because of the cover. It's giving me fall vibes, and that is You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This might have been on my list last year. I don't remember. This was a book of the month book that I picked up because, I mean, look at this cover. Tell me it's not all things fall. But this is a romance, and it follows Ari and Josh. It says right here, when Ari and Josh first meet, the wrong kind of sparks fly. They hate each other immediately. So they have nothing in common except for the fact that they are sleeping with the same woman. And then it says that they meet years later, both reeling from ego-bruising breakups, and a chance encounter leads to a surprising connection. Friendship. Turns out spending time with your former nemesis is fun when you're too sad to hate each other. So I think there's going to be something that comes from it. I've heard this is like When Harry Met Sally vibes as well, but I don't know. I mean, just tell me this cover's not all things fall. So this is like, if I need to break up some of the fantasy, because I have a lot of fantasy on here. Contemporary romance. Alright, the next one. I've got a lot of subscription books on this list, I am discovering. This one is The Forest Rim, and this is by Catherine Purdy. I had never heard of this book until it came in a fairy loop. I mean, like, look how stunning this is. Also, I'm like 90% sure there's something fun. Yeah, like, look at this hardcover. Amazing. So this one takes place in a forest, which is the biggest reason why it's on this list. Something about forest stories, fantasy stories that have to do with forests, give me fall vibes. So in this world, there's this thing called, or this was this thing called the Book of Fortune, and villagers would whisper their desires into the pages, and it would reveal how to obtain them, until one day someone used the book for evil. Afterwards, the branches of the forest Scribd snatched the book away, and the village withered. The villagers tried to make amends to the forest, but every time someone crosses over the border, they're never returned. And so it follows our main character, Clara, whose mother is dying, and so she decides that she's going to go into the woods and is going to find this book and fix it. And she ends up going into the woods with her best friend Axel, who has had feelings for her for quite a while, and he puts them to the side to help her out. And so it's the two of them going into this forest and figuring stuff out. Forests mean fall to me, so there you go. Next one is one that I'm really like gonna start this one soon, so like this one should get finished soon, and that's The Hemlock Queen by Hannah Witten. This is the sequel to The Foxglove King. I really enjoyed the first book, so I'm excited to see how the second one's gonna go. This is a world that follows our main character Lore, and she has magical abilities that have to do with catacombs and this substance that is basically like death. And so in the first book, she ends up accidentally showing these powers, and she gets kidnapped by, or not kidnapped, but arrested by the king, and she's like, well, I'm going to jail for sure. And then the king has other plans and uses her powers to help him out. He thinks that there's like something's going to happen in the court. He thinks his son is the one who's involved, so she basically ends up faking her identity and going into the court to figure out what's going on. It's way more than that. There's a lot of other stuff that goes around, but the magic system has to do with death and like resurrecting the dead. So that's giving me fall vibes. And I'm thinking the sequel is going to do the same thing. So, and there's like a little bit of a mystery. So I really enjoyed the first one, and I'm hoping the second one is just as good. All right, the next one another romance, but it's a fantastical romance, and that is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I love Ali Hazelwood. You guys know how I feel about this author. I basically own everything that she has written at this point, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But this is her first non-contemporary romance. This is a fantasy romance, and it's between vampires and werewolves. To paranormal romance, it's basically like the alpha of the wolf pack and the daughter of the powerful vampire councilman are forced to get married, and then other stuff goes down. I've never read anything like this before, but it's a fantastical, almost romantasy. It's not really, it's more paranormal romance, but it's her first step into fantasy, and it just screams fall, specifically October fall. So vampires, werewolves, fantasy, romance. Yes, yes, yes. And another one that'll look familiar, because it's definitely on my September TBR as well, but we'll see if I get to it, is The Ones We Burn by Rebecca Mix. Now this one has definitely been on quite a few TBRs, but it's witchy. Our main characters are witches, so that's kind of why it's on this list. We follow our main character, Ranka, who is content to live her life the way it is, hidden, doesn't want to do anything, and she basically gets chosen by her clan, I'm not even sure they're called a clan, but like the people that she lives with, her village, to be the bride to the human village court. But she's charged with killing him. So, you know, some other stuff is happening, but it's fantastical. It has to do with witches. I've read quite a few things that it's like a marriage of convenience where one party is being sent to kill the other, and of course it never goes as planned. So, and I like that trope I'm discovering, so I'm interested to see how it's going to go in this one. The next one is The City of Thorns by C.N. Crawford. This is the first in a trilogy. This was one of the books that I found when I went down in like my romantasy kick last year, and I made a romantasy TBR, and I just kind of like looked up romantasy books. This is one of them. It's part of the Demon Queen Trials, so it's definitely like Hades. It's not Hades, but like Lord of, I think he's called the Lord of Chaos, but like the guy in charge of death. Like that's the vibe. And so it follows our main character, who I don't actually know her name. It doesn't say on the back. And it's from her perspective, so we'll see. But it's her birthday, and she is crashed by a demon who comes in because she has a doppelganger out there. He's known as the Lord of Chaos, and he's mistaken me for my succubus doppelganger. And so he takes her down to like this other world. But he doesn't understand that she's mortal, and so like they basically try to help each other out. She wants to know what happened to her mom. She wants to hunt down her mom's killer, and in return, she's going to help him. But she's kind of convinced that he might have a hand in her mother's murder. So, it's a romantasy vibe with a being of darkness is the best way I'm going to describe it. I don't know. I found all three somewhere, so like this is just the first one that I picked up in New York City when we went, but sounds interesting. But again, like Lord of Chaos, tell me that doesn't like scream fall. And another book that I actually picked up in New York as well is Hex Appeal, and this is by Kate Johnson. This is one of those like fluffy rom-com books, but the main characters are witches. There's like a vibe, and like a bunch of these have been coming out recently. But it follows Essie, who lives in the village with other witches, and they have lived there for like a very long time, and they end up getting a new landlord, and so he's just discovered his tenants haven't paid rent since the 1700s, and I don't know if he like knows that they're actual witches or if she's keeping that from him. I don't know. It's fun, fluffy rom-com, witchy vibes. Sounds interesting. Would like to get to that if I can. And the last book is one that I had not actually thought about being interested in until this year, and then it just kind of like piqued my interest all of a sudden. And that is Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. So this is one that's been out for quite a while, and it's a trilogy, and I've heard really good things about this one, but it's like, I believe YA, but I might be wrong about that. But it's like a mystery. Follow our main character. What is her name? Pip. And she lives in this town. And in this town, a few years ago, there was this girl named Andy, and she was like pretty popular girl. And she was murdered, and everyone is like, oh, her boyfriend did it. So she's murdered, and then her boyfriend commits suicide because of this. And Pip is not convinced because she knew this guy when they were growing up, and he was nothing but nice. So for her final project when she's a senior, she decides to kind of dive into the investigation just to kind of cast some doubt on it, and then she uncovers some stuff, and so she goes down the rabbit hole here. I know that there's a Netflix movie, TV show. There's a Netflix adaptation of it now, which looked a little bit interesting. But I don't know. I've been like, this has been like on my radar for quite a while, and I've gone back and forth on whether or not I want to read it. But I'm leaning towards yes. I'm very curious about it. So, and there's a lot of hype around it, at least in the circles that I've seen. So I want to dive into it. It is a trilogy. I like to get to the first one this year, but we'll see how I feel about it, if I want to continue. I also don't know if it's like this is solved in this book, or if it's like this one story is over the course of 3 books. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens, but I want to get to the first one at least this year and see if it is my vibe. So that is it. That is a look at my fall TBR. There's definitely way more than the 15 I told you, and I'm not even sure I'm going to get to these 15. I just have so many things. I'm really bad at like saving books for times of years, like the time of year. Like I'm a seasonal reader, and then I don't have enough time to read the amount of books that I want to read in that time period. I have a problem. Anyway, but let me know if you've read, as always, if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in today's video. Are you like me? Are you a seasonal reader? Let me know what you're planning on reading this fall, or just kind of tell me if you're not a seasonal reader, or you just are not feeling the vibe, tell me what's at the top of your TBR right now. I love to know what you are excited about getting to soon. But that's all I have for you guys. So I hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links, so go check all that out, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!